Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. Today's case is going to be the solved case of Lindsay Birbeck. Now this case has recently been in court and it's been all over the news and information is still coming out, but I've tried my best to gather kind of the timeline and all of the facts that have been released and just done my best to try and compile it into one video for you guys, and the information that I found is up to date as of now. I mean, absolutely no disrespect to anyone that I'm going to speak about today, and I have made this video for educational purposes. Lindsay was a 47-year-old higher level teaching assistant. She helped young people with difficulties. She had a daughter called Sarah and a son called Stephen, and she lived in Accrington, Lancashire in England. Lindsay was the kind of person that really enjoyed keeping herself fit. The day started out like any other. It started out fairly normal. It was the school holidays and Lindsay had taken her daughter Sarah out shopping for some clothes for college. Little did they know that this would be the last shared interaction that they would have, the last milestone. She invited Sarah, who was 17, along with her boyfriend to come and have tea with them at 6 o'clock. Before this, she actually decided to go for a stroll. Again, she liked to keep herself fit. She often went out on walks and runs. And there was a nearby wooded area very close to her house, which she used to go into quite a lot, called the Coppice. Her family began to worry about her when she didn't come home. She knew that she'd planned it. She was making them a meal. She was making the tea. She had given a timeline of 6 o'clock. Obviously, she had to get home within a certain amount of time, a certain reasonable amount of time, to actually enable her to cook the food for them. So again, she didn't return and her family raised the alarm because this was completely out of character for her. So where had Lindsay gone? When they initially reported her missing, they actually thought that maybe she'd, like I said, she went out on this walk, maybe she'd had an accident and fallen over somewhere or something and was in trouble and couldn't get back up that way. The police did start searching for Lindsay. After all, she went for a walk out in broad daylight. Surely the thing that would have happened to her, and that maybe she'd just had an accident. It prompted a huge search by the police and by the community, and everyone got involved trying to look for Lindsay. And as the search did continue, over the days, the family did grow more and more worried and they began to fear the worst. And you can completely understand where they're coming from. If it was just an accident, surely they would have found her by now. So where was she? Police did launch a missing persons appeal and did extensive searches of the areas close to Burnley Road, which is where she lived. This was carried out by officers and members of the community. Everyone got involved. Eventually they did discover a body 12 days later, and this was on the 24th of August in 2019. They found Lindsay in the Accrington Cemetery in Lancashire, and she was actually buried in a shallow grave. Her body was discovered wrapped in 2 plastic bags in this makeshift grave, and she was very, very decomposed at this point. Lindsay, because of this, had to be identified through dental records. They didn't find any evidence of any sexual assault, even though, like I said, her body was found naked. Her cause of death was neck injuries. There was a severe compressive force applied to her neck, and they do believe that this could have been either stamping or kicking or actually kneeling on her neck. And the murderer actually attempted to cut off her leg, possibly with a saw. The police searched CCTV footage and conducted interviews trying to find any information as to Lindsay's killer. She was a well-loved member of the community and her family couldn't think of any reason as to why anyone would want to harm her. Whilst trawling the CCTV, they did actually come across some strange footage. And this was of a young male pulling a blue wheelie bin down Burnley Road. And they found this quite strange, which anyone would. Why was he carrying a wheelie bin down the street around the area as to where Lindsay had gone missing? If you're going to put out your bins, you take them to the front of your house, you leave them there and the bin man picks them up. You don't go around walking around with a bin. It was just very odd. They wanted to find out what this young lad was doing. So they did put out a CCTV appeal and did release this clip to the public, asking if anybody could identify this young man. And this was actually done several days after Lindsay's body was found. The family members of this young man did bring him into the police. And at the time, this male couldn't be named because of his age and due to the law, but he has now since been convicted and obviously his name has come forward. And this young man was Rocky Marciano Price, who was actually 16 years old at the time. The police discovered that Rocky had walked to the coppice at around 2:30 p.m. and there was no evidence of him actually carrying a weapon or that he was otherwise equipped to kill someone. Lindsay left her home just after 4 p.m. and as she was entering the coppice, another woman was hurriedly heading out of it via a different route. Like Lindsay, this woman was out for an afternoon stroll in broad daylight. She actually saw Rocky Price, and it kind of sparked something that made her suspicious of him. And I have actually found that it seems like she felt like he was stalking her. He didn't attack her, but it made her scared enough to basically run out of there. She tried to get out as quick as she could, and she was actually looking for heavy things on her way out that she could defend herself with if she needed to. So basically the vibe she got off Rocky was not a good one, and it really, really terrified her. And this woman was actually the lucky one, because Lindsay entered the coppice just moments later, and it's thought that Rocky attacked her shortly after she actually entered, and that he was actually lying in wait for lone females. Even though the police do believe that the coppice is where Lindsay was actually murdered, it's not being confirmed as the actual murder scene. And the attack, by all accounts, was swift and brutal. It's also believed that it was a crime of opportunity, and if it wasn't Lindsay that fateful day, that it would have been somebody else. He most likely used his own two hands to kill her. He then put her in a wheelie bin and calmly walked with this wheelie bin that contained her body down the street. The CCTV footage doesn't show him panicking, it doesn't show anything abnormal other than the fact that it was a bit strange that he was wheeling the wheelie bin all the way down the street. He then wheeled that to the cemetery, and that is where he then buried her body in a shallow grave. Also, at some point, he did try and dismember her. Again, the postmortem came up with that she had cut marks to her legs if somebody tried to dismember it. Maybe he realised that it was more difficult to dismember a human body than he had thought it would be, I'm not sure. But obviously he gave up on the idea and put her in the wheelie bin. I find it strange that he did leave her body in the coppice for a few days, and then he did return to it and move her in plain sight. Obviously you can't see anything, she was in the bin, but basically wheel the bin down in plain sight down to the cemetery, where he then buried her, and she was later discovered. They did also discover Lindsay's shoes in a skip which was in the cemetery when they searched it, and I do believe that it did have Rocky's DNA on it. Now, if that is incorrect in any way, please do let me know, but I did read somewhere that it did contain his DNA. Rocky actually has autism and learning difficulties, and when he was initially questioned, he responded with no comment answers. But after a few interviews, he then made a pre-prepared statement where he admitted to dragging the wheelie bin down the street with Lindsay's body inside and burying her. So basically admitted to disposing of the body, but he stated that he didn't actually kill her. He said that a mystery man had approached him in the area with the promises of a large cash reward if he disposed of the body. And he admitted that yes, he'd buried her body because of this promise of a lot of money. He actually stated, "I've not met this man before. I have not met him since, nor have I had any contact with him. He has not paid me any money. He told me that he would leave the money near where the body had been first, once everything was clear." The trial actually had so many delays, and one of these was due to the COVID outbreak and the social distancing, which made it pretty impossible to see a full jury along with the public and the press in one courtroom. Trial was adjourned on the 15th of June and they set a new date on the 3rd of August. And because of the outbreak, when it was actually put to trial, it was not really a normal trial. They basically had to split it across 3 courtrooms to safely accommodate the attendees during this outbreak and to adhere with the social distancing rules. The family of both sides, members of the public, the press, and members from the youth offending team, as well as junior counsel, were split between 2 different courtrooms. They were then connected by a live feed to the 3rd courtroom, and this seated the jury, the judge, the prosecution and defence barristers, and was used for witness evidence, and again this was to ensure that the social distancing guidelines were adhered to. From what I could find online, Rocky did plead guilty to the disposal of Lindsay's body, but he pleaded not guilty to a murder. On Wednesday the 12th of August 2020, he was found guilty of the murder of Lindsay Birbeck, and Preston Crown Court found him unanimously guilty of her murder 1 year after her disappearance. On the 14th of August 2020, Mrs. Justice Yip jailed Rocky for life, with a minimum of 16 years in custody. Sarah, her daughter, stated outside, "Our lives have been utterly destroyed by the evil and cowardly behaviour of the defender and the horrific manner in which she was murdered. My mum went for a walk on a sunny afternoon in August and never came home. It's unthinkable that something as brutal as this could happen in such a close community and to someone that was loved so dearly." Miss Justice Yip said that while Rocky's autism and learning difficulties did have a significant impact on his communication skills and reduced his impact for empathy, it certainly did not cause him to become violent. Things like this can affect people's judgments and can make people vulnerable. But again, the judge addressed this thoroughly. They looked into his teachers, his school history, and how he acted as a person and things like that. And they basically ruled that he knew what he was doing and he knew that what he was doing was wrong. We don't know why Rocky decided to end Lindsay's life on that fateful day. It was an entirely random killing of a stranger. Maybe he didn't have any reason behind actually killing someone. I really don't know. Maybe he just felt like murderous on that day. I have no idea. And it's just so sad that this crime of opportunity ended the way it did. Again, that first lady that actually spotted him and ran away, she was so lucky. Maybe she would have been his victim. Unfortunately, Lindsay was the next one and she actually did become his victim. I'm really sorry if I didn't get all of the information into this case, or even if I got some things incorrect. Please do let me know if I did. And also, if you have any cases that you'd like me to look into, also let me know those in the comments below. Okay guys, that's all I have on the case of Lindsay Birbeck. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time.